Hi, I'm Espen Kraft and I make 80s inspired synth pop. Today we're going to do it a little bit different. I've been given a little gig. I'm going to write 8 bars of intro music for this thing, and usually I'd break out the DAW and start working in that, but today I'm going to use the Ensoniq EPS 16 Plus to make this entire piece, this little piece. And the reasons I'm going to use the EPS 16 Plus is, well, there's a couple of different reasons. One is this has a very tight sequencer on board. And this little sequencer is pretty advanced, and it's tight and it's smooth and it's fast to work on. So I'm going to use this sequencer to make these 8 bars. And the other reason is this sampler sounds very good. It's got a sound all on its own, and it's perfect for this gig. So what we're going to do is I'm going to sample in some sounds. I'm going to use only sounds from this, and I'm going to take you through the sampling process. And I'm going to make this little track with you watching. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. So the Ensoniq EPS 16 Plus from 1990, an early sample workstation with a variable sample rate from 11.2 kHz to 44.6 kHz. And today I'm going to use the Behringer Model D as a sound source for sampling. Most of the sounds will be from that. I'll sample some drums as well. I'll get to that in a minute. This is a very nice mono synth, and I use it for sampling quite a lot. So when you turn on the Ensoniq EPS 16, this is what greets you: no instruments. But you can have 8 of them. And when I press the button sample, it takes me straight into sample mode, and I have to choose one of the instrument slots for the first sample. Pick sample instrument, and I press this instrument button 1. So let's quickly go through the options in sample mode. You have the bar, with its threshold trigger, which you can adjust. You have the sample rate going from 44.6 down to 11.2. Very nice to have those options. And at 44.6 kHz, I have about 23 seconds of memory capacity on this system I have got here. But I'm going to choose the sample rate of 22.3 for my first sample, which is going to be a bass sound. I set the pre-triggering to around 10 milliseconds. That can vary depending on what type of source I have. The input level is line, and now my sampling time increases because I've gone down in sample frequency. So I'm not overdriving anything. Overdrive can yield excellent results as well, but I'm not going for that now. Press yes to start sampling. And I stop it whenever I want, and I have to play the root key. I have a little bit of effect going on the instrument 1 from before. Since this is a bass sound, I'm not going to loop this sound. I'll do loop a little bit later. Just for now, I want to trim the start of the sample so it'll be nice and snappy. As well as the start point, it's important to trim the end point to get rid of excess memory you don't need. So let's do that for a second. That'll do. I'm not going to loop this one, so let's go through the options in sample trim mode. But this being a bass sound, I don't want as much reverb on this one, so I'll press the effects button and I'll adjust. I'll adjust the parameters to have no reverb on this bass sound. Upon reflection, I might find the lower bandwidth frequency range of that bass sound a little too dull perhaps, so on instrument number 2 I'm going to sample the same bass sound, now at 44.6 kHz, full bandwidth of the EPS. So let's sample that. A lot crispier and beefier this time. And I'll probably end up instrument number 2 for bass. But let's keep both of them for now, and let's see later which one I'll use. Okay, sound number 3 is going to be a bell sound. So I'll just sample that into instrument slot number 3. And let's sample that at, well, let's go for 29 this time. So a little adjusting of the start and end point is necessary, but even more so is the envelope settings for this sound. And the EPS has a lot of preset envelopes going, but none of them seems to fit this sound. The percussion uses the whole length of the release, so that's a bit too long, but I'll go through it manually. So let's go back to the start. I'll skip using those preset envelopes, and let's go for the release time only of the sample. So let's adjust that from 20 and a little bit higher to around 50. That'll do. Moving on, we have some strings, and now we're going to loop it as well. So let's pick out instrument slot number 4. Let's go for half the bandwidth on this sound, because that'll make the strings pretty mellow and fine. And this sound needs to be looped, so I'll loop it forward. Finding a good loop point is often manually fun for a while. So I'll adjust the start point, end point, and loop point, and by doing this back and forth a little while, I'll usually find a good loop point. I never trust a sampler to do this automatically. You have some automatic functions in the EPS as well, but I choose to do it manually. I always do. In life, there are no shortcuts. And we have it. I also want this kind of a white noise analog snare feel with a long decay. So on instrument slot 5, I'll do that. And I want this to be crunchy and nice, so I'll use full bandwidth for this. But again, I have to adjust the release time on that one. A longer release. Just trim up a little bit of the start first. Auditioning samples at lower octaves will often reveal the area you need to trim off a lot easier than doing higher pitched sounds. The Uzi 9mm. Yes, we have that one in the can, 3 more to go. And sound 6 will have a kick. And the kick I will take out of the sequential tom. You know I'm a big fan of the sequential tom. And I have a, no, not a Linn, I have a DMX cart in that now. So I'll sample in a DMX kick for this. It's easy to overdrive the input going from a drum machine like that, but I think we'll have it there. And let's do it at reduced bandwidth to get a little bit more grit or crunch, or yeah, you can call it whatever you want. A little bit of personality. So let's do it. Let's do it. Do it now. Ah, that's cool on its own, but probably not what I'm going for. So let's do it one more time and reduce or lower the volume going out of the drum machine. Let's do it again. So I'll just adjust the volume out of the drum machine there. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that'll do. So let's trim that again. You can get it nice and clicky, almost 808-like, by chopping off some wood at the beginning. Well, let's do the snare, and on the snare I'm going to use another old sampling trick, and that's by tuning up the source sound before you sample it. So by pitching the snare up in the drum machine before sampling it, I'll get a bit of added crunch when I use it at a lower octave in the sampler after sampling. So let's do that. Nice and punchy, don't you think? Let's trim it a little bit. And that's the snare. And finally, on sound 8, we'll have some hi-hats. And a little bit of trimming on this as well. I'm going to trim off more than I actually sampled to get a little bit more snappy attack and a little more lighter hat. So let's break down what we have got so far. So now I have my 8 sounds, and I press the sequencer button, and I'm in create sequence mode of the EPS, and I'll just do a 4 on the floor type of beat here, and I'll start with the kick. I'll choose the instrument by pressing the instrument button. There's nothing to it. Press record and play, and after a 4 beats countdown, I'm into recording mode, and I'm going to play and record the whole 8 bars. I could have broken it up, but I'm just going to play it through the 8 bars. And then I stop. I want to keep this track. Yes. Let's hear it back. This is unquantized. This is how I recorded it, played it, but I'm going to quantize this track. Track 6 is the kick. Quantize to 1/16. Yes, I want to do that. I want to keep the new track made from the quantize command. And it is now quantized to 16th notes. So let's do the next one, and that'll be the hats. Let's play a little hi-hat pattern for 8 bars as well. Everything you see in this video is basically done in real time. There's been no rehearsing, no trying out stuff. I might edit the video a little bit in post because I don't want this to last for 2 hours, but everything is done on the fly here. So that's the hats sequence. I'm not going for any big velocity variation. I don't have velocity on these sounds at all, actually. Maybe one of them, I can't remember this as I'm recording this voiceover, which always happens after I've recorded the video. But I'm not going for that. But I'm going for the snare. I have to record the snare. I can hear now that this isn't exactly trimmed as well as I want to. I'll do that later. I have to trim a little bit of the start point of this snare, otherwise it'll lag just a little too much for my taste. But let's quantize it and always keep the new track. Since all of these sounds are going out on an effect bus, I'll adjust some of that later as well for the different effects going on the different instruments, but I'll also adjust the volume for each part, each instrument. The snare was a little bit too high, so I'm adjusting the volume for that snare in the internal mixer. So that'll work. So I'll go for the second bass sound, the more crisp bass. I'm just going to lower that in volume. And I'll have to find a good bass part. And this has not been rehearsed, it's just made on the fly. So let's try it. That was great, I think. In my humble opinion. Let's quantize. So that's the bass in the can. Let's do the strings. I'll just adjust those down a little bit in volume as well. Up until this point, every sound has been quantized, but for the strings and bells, I will not use any quantize. I like to have that little bit of human feel into this. So that's the strings. Bells. So I have to find a good melodic part for the strings. That's often tough. Melodic lines are not easy because you want it catchy, but simple. Simple and catchy. So this is me just faffing around, trying to find a good lead motif. Something like that. Let's try it. Almost, but not quite. Let's do it one more time. Okay, that'll do. One more sound to go, because I want to use every sound I've sampled except for the other bass sound. So this is a snare, the white noise snare. And that snare sound can and should be quantized, so it'll be snappy as well. What I want to do now is to adjust that snare sample a little bit one more time. I'm going to trim up a little bit more in the start there. I think that's the right move at this point. Trim up a little bit more at the end, and I'll tighten up the whole track. And basically this is the track, all done on the EPS-16 at a very short amount of time using only custom-made samples, which is kind of important to me. I need to have fun as well doing this. And I usually don't like to use stock sounds, except for when I'm going for a classic preset from an 80s synth, like a DX. I only hope the client is happy with this kind of Italo track for his intro. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me work this old sampler for a little while, and I hope you enjoyed the results that came out of it. Please check the video description for more information on this track, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!